Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the time today. It's good to be back in the Midwest. I spent the first 38 years of my life in the Midwest, left about 8 years ago and moved south. So it's great to be back, especially in May, not in January or February. So very happy to be here, and also excited to be in a room filled with HR leaders. And I really believe that HR is going to drive more corporate performance than any other function in the future. More than marketing, more than sales, more than product, more than engineering. You all are going to drive so much benefit to organizations moving forward. And I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to give you a few things to think about. So that's the entire idea here. And before we talk about corporate performance, because corporate performance is a little bit boring, let's talk about human performance, because society has become absolutely obsessed with human performance. And Steve mentioned some of these things in the intro, but it's everything from fitness trackers, who's wearing some kind of fitness tracker, Whoop Band, Apple Watch, Fitbit, Oura Ring, all these things are tracking our every movement, from sleep to nutrition to whatever you might have. There's also nutritional supplements. We're drinking green smoothies, athletic greens, AG1, biohacking podcasts, Huberman Labs, any Huberman Labs listeners? That's an interesting one. And Moneyball, one of my favorite movies of all time. In Moneyball, in professional sports, is a great story about using data to make better decisions about talent. And that was often in the face of what we might think of as prevailing wisdom. And so the Oakland Athletics, which were a Major League Baseball team, had one of the lowest payrolls in the league. And they leveraged data to make decisions about who to acquire, who to put on the team, and what positions to put them in. And they won the division. And their leader, Billy Beane, became the most sought after general manager in the league, and also became the highest paid general manager in the league. So I think there are a lot of parallels here to HR and HR leadership. So this obsession with human performance, you might be surprised to learn that in the business world, in the current cycle, we are actually at our lowest productivity growth in more than a generation, 44 years. So not since the 1970s has business non-farm productivity increased at a slower rate than it is right now. And so you may be asking yourself, why is that? There's all this technology, there's been all these improvements. How could it possibly be growing at a lower rate today than it did, in the last 44 years? Are we leaving this obsession with human performance at the office door? Or are there other factors at play here? So I mentioned at the very beginning that HR is really at the nexus of helping to drive corporate performance. And Accenture did a study about 2 years ago. They talked to 570 different organizations that were trying to increase productivity within that organization. And there were a few different groups that they examined. One group was really focused on leveraging data and technology together, but just those two alone. And those companies drove a 4% pretty modest increase in productivity. But those that also prioritized people along with data and tech almost tripled their productivity to 11%. And so when I say HR is holding the keys to unlocking corporate performance, this is exactly what I mean. So what's been holding us back? And let's talk about each of those three: data, people, and technology. So data and people data, you all at your organizations are sitting on massive amounts of people data. However, only 3% of executives, according to a study by Deloitte, only 3% of executives say they have enough insights about their people to make sound decisions. So 97% are essentially making decisions about people based on gut feel. The second one here, people, and specifically because managers are the force multipliers within any business. They're the ones who, in some cases, have thousands of people on their team. And those people are driving innovation, they're driving change. And I know we were just talking about in the last session, succession, this idea of internal mobility. And we did a study of 1,000 individual contributors last year, and only 2 in 5 individual contributors want to become people managers, 38%. And the reason for that is those people managers are getting squeezed. The expectations are higher than they've ever been from both employees and from their own leaders. And they're under an immense amount of pressure to do more with less. It's just a very difficult job. The third, technology. And I know there's been some discussion about AI. I know we're all probably using AI to varying degrees in our personal lives or kind of off the side of our desks. But a study by Josh Bersin's company, which is in flight right now, showed that only 4% of HR teams have a generative AI strategy at all. So AI, as we all know, is going to unlock this huge wave of productivity increase and has all this horsepower, but that horsepower is essentially sitting in the stable. So when it's unleashed, it will unlock a great deal of productivity increase. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's examine each of these three in more detail. So thinking about driving corporate performance, how do we do that? And the first one, people data. So people data is one of the most valuable data sets in the entire organization. But in many cases, best case is it's being leveraged, but it's siloed. In worst cases, it's just kind of sitting there dormant. And I'm talking about people data from across your entire tech stack, from ATS to learning management to your HRIS to your performance management. All this data is being collected, and it's primarily thought of as HR data. But people data is business data. People data helps you make better decisions on behalf of the person and on behalf of the business. And so, people make up 60 to 70% of OpEx typically. And so there's this huge opportunity to leverage that in a much more meaningful way. And for HR to be viewed as the driver of that corporate performance. So I talked a little bit about the future and how I believe in the future, HR is uniquely positioned to improve productivity and improve performance of the corporation overall. In the last 25 years, there's kind of been this breathless obsession with the customer. And we all see on LinkedIn profiles, I'm customer obsessed. Well, we should be employee obsessed. And I think all of you are, but that is the last source of competitive advantage. Because ultimately, customers, in acquiring them and extracting as much money out of them as we can and retaining them is only going to go so far. And that's beginning to plateau. And we're in an environment where there is talent scarcity, there is a real need to upskill and reskill employees, and over the next 25 years, that is going to be what unlocks change and what unlocks innovation. So people data, I think historically it's kind of been thought of as how you measure impact. Are these programs that we're running working? Are we increasing our metrics? Are we having an impact on the business? And I'm here to tell you that people data doesn't just help you measure impact, it helps you create impact. But creating impact doesn't just reside within HR. It's providing the right insights in the right hands at the right time. So the right hands, think about a manager. A manager makes countless micro decisions every single day about the people on their team. And if they're not getting the right insights about their people in real time, in the moment, then it's really hard to move at the speed of business and make the right decision. So I think something else that's unique about HR, probably more than any other function, is every decision in HR is interconnected. So a compensation decision is going to impact retention. And if you have people leaving, that's going to impact TA. And if you're hiring people, that's going to impact your ability to hit your DEI targets. So all of these things on down the line, there's this huge ripple effect of every decision that's made, and each one of them is interconnected. But the challenge is everyone has the tech. Everyone has different technology in their tech stack that they're using, but in most cases that's siloed. And so Visier, what my company does is we unify all of that data, we synthesize it, we make sense of it, and we push it out to the people who need to make decisions every day. Are we hiring the right people? Who's at risk for resignation? What learning programs are most effective? What skills do we need, before we open a job rec? All those things are interconnected, and we help make sense of all of that. So lever 2, let me talk a little bit about lever 2, and that is, again, people managers and leaders and equipping them with the insights they need to lead. Let leaders lead. So bad bosses. We've all had them. We all know who they are in a lot of cases in our organization. And they are very costly. So they are costing US businesses $360 billion each year. And we talked a little earlier about being a manager is really, really hard. Why is it so hard? So managers are expected to do the work. They also need to go out and hire and develop and retain and engage their team. They need to manage performance. They need to connect their employees across functions. And they need to do all the operational things around, performance reviews and, filling out surveys and all of those other things as well. So it's a very, very difficult position to be in. And so I think it's important that we ask ourselves, how are we helping managers? What are we giving them? What insights are we giving them about their team to help them lead? And I've been a people manager, I know many of you have been, for probably about 20 years. And typically what I've gotten in most jobs is an employee engagement survey score once or twice a year that tells me how my team is feeling. And I really view that as kind of a mood ring. It's interesting, but it's a snapshot in time of how people are feeling. And tomorrow it could be totally different. A week from now it could be totally different. And more holistic people insights are much more akin to an Apple Watch. So an Apple Watch is telling you across a number of dimensions how you're doing. How are you sleeping? Are you standing enough? Are you getting enough exercise? Are you breathing properly? It's also alerting you when you have an issue, if your heart rate spikes, if you get in an accident. And it's all doing it in real time. And again, we have the data to be able to do this and provide managers with the insights that they need. And so some of our best customers are providing their managers today with a single view of multiple metrics on their team that are important to HR and important to the manager. So that might be employee engagement is one of them, but also learning. What compliance courses do people need to take and where do they stand? Or absenteeism, or internal movement, or performance, or even how are they collaborating across other teams. And this single view of understanding a team in real time is immensely valuable to a manager because they can identify risk and they can double down on the things that are working. So it's not just about helping the manager manage, but we talked about bad bosses earlier and how bad bosses are very costly. We also have customers who are measuring manager effectiveness. So the last, 2 years running, Gartner does an annual survey of HR leaders, and the number one priority of HR leaders the last 2 years has been manager effectiveness. So probably no surprise to this group, but again, these are the force multipliers. How do you identify the ones who need help, and how do you scale and replicate the ones who are doing well? And I know you all have people strategies, things that are important, and you can measure the behaviors that lead to delivering on your people strategy? So again, internal mobility, or are managers keeping your top performers? Are they managing absenteeism, motivating people to come in and do the work? Are they creating an inclusive work environment? And you can actually create your own index. So, employee engagement score is nothing but an index about engagement. But you can bring together 5, 6, 10 different metrics and create your own index. And we have customers who are doing that as well to understand their manager's effectiveness. So last lever here, and this is, Gen AI, ton of hype around Gen AI. And, I believe we're at the cusp of unlocking this huge wave of productivity moving forward. And sitting on our hands is just not an option. So Gen AI, even within HR, BCG is projecting that productivity increases will be around 30% for HR in general. So that's great. But there are two sides to the AI coin. And this idea of productivity, efficiency, doing more stuff faster is one side of the coin. But running in the wrong direction faster only gets you further from the goal. And the other side of this is effectiveness. And I think this is where humanity comes in. Because if you're just, producing that extra job rec or job description, but you don't actually understand the skills that are needed, or if there's an internal candidate that might be a good fit, or if you need the rec at all, again, you're running in the wrong direction. And so the flip side of that is about effectiveness and decision making. So providing the right insights before you produce that next thing. And so we have a digital generative AI assistant for people insights, and huge advancements in bringing in data and specifically your data that anyone in the organization that you choose can ask a natural language question and get a natural language response in seconds. And this is completely tailored to the person asking, so permissions, don't have to worry about the wrong data getting into the wrong hands. It's completely secure, and it's tailored to your organization's data. And it really allows people who need to make decisions about people to get insights in a moment's notice. And so you can see the demo up there. But this is something that is, we talk about managers needing information, or HRBPs needing insights in the moment. At the rate that things are changing and at the rate decisions need to be made, this provides those answers in a matter of seconds. So I am the first to admit that I think about Gen AI taking my job all the time. And I think a lot of us think about, well, what's the impact of Gen AI? How's that going to impact my work? But I would just challenge everyone to kind of flip that on its head and think about how Gen AI can impact work for the better. Because again, from a humanity standpoint, I think we owe it to our people to make better decisions on their behalf and on behalf of the business. So just to recap, we're entering this new age of HR. 3 key levers that are going to unlock performance and really position HR as the driver of that. Number 1, people, data, and tech together, those 3 drive triple the productivity increase as just 2 alone. Managers, very difficult job. They need to be equipped with the insights they need to lead, and they need them in real time. And third, AI delivering on the promise of efficiency, yes, but also effectiveness. And so back to the Accenture study that I mentioned earlier, the organizations who are using all 3, people, data, and tech, it's only around 5% of organizations that are doing that. And so there's huge runway here. There's huge opportunity. And the future is here. One of my favorite quotes from William Gibson. The future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. So there is massive opportunity to act and to start to move on some of these things that I talked about today. So that is all that I had. We have a table in the back room if anyone's interested in learning more, but appreciate everyone's time and attention.